Greetings, this is Greg. I ran my Fiat 124 at the drag strip a few days ago. Had a good time. I have to say I've been remiss in my 124 duties lately. I apologize for that. I haven't posted much on this channel, haven't been on the forums. Rest assured I have been working on products for the car and doing testing, including testing at the track. So this video should update you guys on my 124 related activities. Before we go any farther, I want to point out that I do development work and testing for Eurocompulsion, aka EC. So while everything in this video is factual, there is a commercial aspect to it. I like the Fiat 124 a lot. It's a fun car to drive, but it's not what you would normally buy if the quarter mile is your thing, but it is fun to run it down the drag strip. More importantly to me, I think it's a very good measure of how well the car performs. Now, don't get me wrong, the dyno is great, I use that a lot, and timed runs through a gear can be meaningful as well. However, the quarter mile not only factors in how much power the engine has, but when in the RPM that power comes around and how well the car responds to the on and off throttle action when you're going through the gears. It's quite possible to have a car that pulls hard through a gear but falls on its face and hesitates when you shift. So I like the quarter mile, and by that I mean the real quarter mile, the drag strip. There are apps that measure this, and some do a decent job, but they can be manipulated, so I generally don't have a lot of faith in big claims from apps that are not backed up by actual track times, or at least some other type of evidence. So let's get started. First, my engine update. If you've watched this channel, you know I built a special engine for the car with forged pistons, some mild porting in the head, and some other minor modifications to it. Well, that engine is not in the car. It ran well for about a year, and during that year I wanted to get it to the track, and I wish I would have. But the track was closed for a long time due to the pandemic. Then it was winter, and then I had interference from my job, real life, and so on. A couple of months ago, the planets were aligned and I was going to be able to go, and I was all set, and I figured before I'd head to the track I'd freshen the car up a bit, wash it, change the oil, and so forth. Well, bad news. I found metal in the oil filter. Now, the engine wasn't making any bad sounds, so I checked the compression and it was fine, so I really wasn't sure what was going on, but I was concerned. Now, discretion being the better part of valor in this sort of situation, I pulled the engine. Still not sure what happened though, so I tore the engine down and found absolutely nothing wrong with it. I had it checked out by 3 other people, 2 of them that work at Eurocompulsion and a machinist at a very reputable shop, and we all concluded that there was nothing wrong with the engine and the oil was from some metal shavings. There was the result of machining, and I just somehow missed them when I cleaned the engine up before assembly. I feel bad about that, but fortunately the oil filter caught everything and no damage was done. So mistakes were made. I missed some stuff when cleaning out the block, then pulled the engine when I didn't really have to. However, I'm taking advantage of this situation in a number of ways. Turn every tragedy into a benefit sort of thing. First, I've been able to inspect the engine and see how it was doing, and I'm happy to say there was no sign of any trouble. It's super clean inside. There isn't even any carbon buildup, which is partially because I ran it with water injection, which sort of steam cleans the piston tops and combustion chambers. I'm putting it back together pretty much as is, but I am making some minor changes to ensure that it doesn't blow a head gasket, because there was another engine of similar spec in alpha testing that did blow a head gasket. So I'm taking a few steps to eliminate or at least massively reduce that risk. Other than that, it's going back together the same way and I'll get it back in the car. For now, I'm taking advantage of my mistake in another way. I grabbed a salvage yard engine from LKQ. I'm using it to test some performance products, and I should have all this done in a few months, then I'll swap back in my special engine, which is significantly more powerful. A quick refresher to those who haven't watched this channel before. My first 124 was an automatic non-Abarth model called a Classica. In these cars, the automatics are slower, and the Classicas don't have limited slip. I took it to the drag strip with a Eurocompulsion V4 intake, intercooler, and Phase 2 tune, It ran a 14.6 quarter mile. The density altitude was about 1,900 feet. That was over 3 years ago, and to this day, as far as I know, it's still the quickest actual quarter mile for an automatic 124 ever. And again, this one was a Classica, no limited slip. A quick word about density altitude. High temperatures, high humidity, and low pressure all adversely affect power in the 124, or most cars, especially temperature. The effect from pressure is reduced as the turbo makes up to it to an extent. It's still a factor though. Now there are online calculators that try and even this out from one set of conditions to another. They're not bad, but they're certainly not perfect. For the rest of this video, I'm just going to reference the actual times, even though the conditions at the track for my latest runs were in far from ideal conditions. But if you want to adjust them using whatever calculator, have at it. So that 14.6 run was in an automatic. I think the car actually could have done better, but the car sold online literally while I was at the track, so I never got to run it again. The next 124 I bought, which is the one I still have, is a black Abarth manual transmission car. I ran the car at the track in stock form, never got it out of the low 15s. I know some magazines say it's a 14.9 car, but nobody has ever managed to do that at the track with a stock Fiat 124. The best I got was 15.2 or so. Not even that, actually. We then put on the following mods, and there's a video about this: a V4 intake, Eurocompulsion intercooler, and the Eurocompulsion Phase 2 tune. I also put on the EC turbo with the intent of running Phase 3 at a later time. The turbo had a negligible effect on quarter mile performance without Phase 3 because the lower level tunes just don't run enough boost, and not enough boost at high RPM to need it. The car ran a completely stock exhaust at the time, and it did 14.34. This was over 2.5 years ago, and as far as I know, it was the fastest ever for a modern 124 on gasoline, and has been up until my latest runs, which are going to be in this video. Of course, I'm excluding the factory rally cars. Somebody will probably bring that up. Obviously, those are much faster, but they are not street legal, not even close, and they cost $300,000 when new, and that was if you could get Fiat to sell you one. They also use a completely different engine. I would love to have one though, but apples to apples, I'm talking about Fiat 124s with the 1.4 multi-air engine, not the Alfa Romeo 1750. Anyhow, that brings us up to today. The car ran a 14.157 at a density altitude just over 2,300 feet. I'll go over the mods I had because I promise you it is not what you're expecting. Of course, it's running the Eurocompulsion V4 intake. There simply isn't a better intake for performance. It's a true cold air, ram air, high flow air intake. It's an off-the-shelf part from Eurocompulsion. I did make one minor change to it. I sealed the end caps on with silicone. The idea is to prevent any of the ram air pressure from leaking out. I seriously doubt this makes any measurable difference, but I don't remove the end caps anyway when I clean the filter, so I sealed them on. Moving on, I have the EC catch can. We call it a catch can, but it's really a secondary air-oil separator. The stock air-oil separator allows a lot of oil to go back into the intake through the turbo, and then it collects in the intercooler piping. I don't like that, hence I installed the catch can. Here we have the big EC turbo along with a Forge wastegate actuator and diverter valve. Forge, that's a brand. For the purposes of this trip to the drag strip, these things don't matter. I wasn't running enough boost to really use any of them, but they are on the car, and I'll show you what they can do at the drag strip, hopefully next time I go there. Now, for the new products, I have the EC crosspipe. It's been out for a little while, but this is the first time I've taken it to the drag strip. For those of you not familiar with it, or with crosspipe on this car, the 124 is built on the same chassis as the Mazda MX-5, aka Miata. The car has, the Mazda that is, has the exhaust pipe running under the passenger side of the car. The 124 does too. That's great for the MX-5 because it has exhaust exiting on the passenger side of the engine. That's how Mazda's engine is set up. However, the Fiat engine in the 124 is the opposite. The exhaust exits the driver's side. Thus, it needs another exhaust pipe to cross under the rear of the engine to connect the downpipe on the driver's side of the car to the exhaust system on the passenger side of the car. That's the cross pipe. The 124's factory exhaust is actually pretty decent, except for that cross pipe. I've dynoed a lot of exhaust systems on this car and found that, well, first of all, none of the rear or axle back exhaust sections make any difference, other than noise and appearance. They don't make any difference in power. The mid pipes also have almost no effect. Most of the restriction aft of the catalytic converter is in this cross pipe. So the EC cross pipe takes care of this, while allowing you to keep the rest of your factory exhaust. And that's especially important to me, as I really like the factory record Monza axle back exhaust, which was standard in some parts of the world, but optional in the US. I like the way the record Monza sounds, I like the valve action, I like the way it looks, and with the stock catalytic converter, the EC cross pipe gives effectively the same performance gains as any of the full systems on the market, but allows you to keep your record Monza valved exhaust. I also added the EC Race Intercooler. This is similar to the regular EC intercooler I was using before, but it has improved routing for the charge air and ducting to prevent the cooling air from spilling around the outside of the core. That's the reason the ducting is angled the way it is. It has also 4 extra fittings, of which I'm using 3. First, there are 2 fittings for the intercooler sprayers. I guess I'm counting those as 1, but there are 2 of them. And intercooler sprayers are commonly used in rally cars, and some factory cars have them as well. There was a version of the WRX recently that had them. I do have the spray system on my car and it's functional, but I couldn't use it at the drag strip. You can't even run your air conditioning there because of the risk of dripping water onto the track, so of course I did not activate the sprayers there. Would have been nice to, though. It also has a port for water methanol injection. Again, I have that on the car, but it's not being used in this event. I wasn't running enough boost to need it. It also has a fitting for a charge air temperature gauge. That's the post intercooler air temperature. I do have that on the car, and that was quite useful at the track, and especially with some other things with this car, which we'll get to. Last, it has a fitting for nitrous oxide, which is not on the car. On to the ECU. I flashed the Eurocompulsion Phase 1 tune. Probably surprised about that, but there's a reason here. I flashed Phase 1 into sport mode and the stock tune into non-sport mode. So this way I could run the car either with or without an ECU tune. And again, I had a reason. And the reason I did it this way is because I wanted to run the car with the new Piggy Back module I'm testing. So of course I wanted to be able to have the stock tune in operation when I did that. Now this new Piggy Back is a simple 2-channel module, but with some key advantages over others in the market. It's inexpensive, it's very easy to install, and it has a cabin-mounted control head, that means you can put it on the dash, that allows the selection of different levels of boost increase over stock. The control head also functions as sort of a quasi-boost gauge, so it has some additional usefulness there. Now, I'm not allowed to say what type it is or show pictures of it until it passes durability testing. But I can tell you that so far so good, and it's darn quick. With the mods described on the car, which are backing it up, my 124 ran a sub 14.4 with this piggyback. And I'm pretty sure that's the quickest quarter mile ever for a piggyback on a 124. In fact, it's darn close to my time from before with Phase 2. 14.342 with Phase 2 versus 14.347 for the piggyback. Of course, the Piggy had the advantages of 3 extra things: the cross pipe, the race intercooler, and upgraded tires. During this outing, I put on 225 tires, up from the 215s I ran before, and furthermore, these tires, while technically street-legal DOT tires, are pretty darn close to racing slicks. In fact, I treated them as such, and used the burnout box at the drag strip, which was really fun. I hadn't done that before. The stickiness plus the extra width of the tire helped drop my 60-foot times a little bit. Not as much as I was hoping for, but some. And that helped the piggyback as well. Specifically in this case, the 60-foot with the piggyback was about 0.04 of a second quicker. Oh, and I had 93 octane this time versus 91 in all the previous tests. So that helped the piggyback too. So the piggyback's not legitimately that close to phase 2, but the point is, with this combination, it's right there. Still, I'm impressed with this piggyback and how well it worked with this combination of mods. I'm testing it on other cars as well, so I'll have more information about it soon. One of the things I don't like about piggybacks, I've talked about this before, is the limitation they have. They have a lot of limitations as compared to a regular flash tune. And that causes the people that buy piggybacks to eventually upgrade to flash tunes. They take the piggybacks off and they just become paperweights. That's something I'm hoping to change with this unit. With this one, you don't have to take it off your car because you get a flash tune, because it can be turned off from the control head. That's assuming your flash tune, well then I should say assuming that your flash tune isn't on the ragged edge of engine destruction, and most of them aren't. You can use the piggyback to bump boost up a little when it's safe to do so. For example, when it's cold outside, or if you just put race gas in the car, or if you have some other reason you're sure that your car can handle it. That's why I had the EC Phase 1 tune on the car and not Phase 3. Phase 1 is a pretty mellow tune. I know how much safety is built into it, and I knew I could use it in combination with the piggyback to demonstrate this dual use concept, so that's what I did. Keep in mind, I know the limits of these engines, so don't just go out and add a piggyback to your flash tune. When all my testing is done, I'll release some guidelines to help you with this. For starters, it's a good idea to have a post intercooler air temp gauge. Then you have a pretty good idea of when it's safe to turn up the boost via the button on the dash. Anyway, out of the gate with Phase 1 and the piggyback, it ran in the 14.2s. It did so twice, and that matters. I think anytime you're looking at quarter mile times from a vendor, you want to see that their time was repeatable. Plus, timing errors do happen. They're rare, but they do happen. For example, here is my car, my Fiat 124, it's number 202, running a sub 9 second quarter mile on this same day. Obviously, it didn't really do that. They got the cars confused on that run. Who knows what car ran that? It was certainly not a 4-cylinder. So, this is the only photo I have from this day at the track. There were 2 professional photographers there, so I figured I'd be able to get more pictures and get them easily. However, I guess they sort of overlooked my little car. I get it. There were some pretty extreme cars here. Take a look at this 69 Camaro. I don't know what that supercharger is from, but it's not from a car. It's from a locomotive, a ship or something. It's awesome, and it's really fast. If you guys want, I'll try to talk to the owner next time and see if I can get more information on it. I think its name is Showtime. I looked it up on the internet. I couldn't find any info on it. So anyhow, back to the 124. Best time was 14.157. I think that's darn good. And again, remember, pump gasoline and all factory emission controls hooked up and working, including the factory catalytic converter. Technically, it's on street tires, so I guess I can say, yeah, I did this on street tires. But in practical terms, let's be realistic here. They're race tires, and they knocked 0.05 of a second off of the 60-foot. Now, you might note that the trap speed isn't quite as high as it was on the previous Phase 2 run. It's close, but not quite there. Part of that is because, again, the tires, they gave that 60-foot that was about 0.05 of a second faster. By the way, that's not as much as I thought it would be with these tires, but it was a humid day, which makes the track slick. At least that's what the drag racing folks were telling me. I have to admit, I'm not super knowledgeable about drag racing track conditions, or even drag racing in general. I like to think that my driving is okay, but there's a lot I don't know. For example, these signs that you go past on the way to line up, I don't know what they mean. I just follow the herd, line up, and go when the light turns green. I have a great time, and I do want to learn more about drag racing because, as I'm saying over and over, it's really a pretty good time. Anyway, The trap speed. The reason it's not as high as the previous Phase 2 run is because both the Piggy Back and the Phase 1 tune don't add a lot of boost at the high end. Phase 1 doesn't add much boost at the high end by design, and the Piggy Back can't because it's a two-channel system. It doesn't detect RPM. All it can do is move the whole boost curve up or down. So when you shift the car at redline from third into fourth, the RPM falls into an area that's just at a point where boost starts to fall off with both of these tunes, even when they're used in conjunction with each other. Phase 2 is just stronger in that RPM range, so it pulls harder at the high end, which really matters because you spend a fair amount of time there in fourth gear at the track. So that's it. The cross pipe and race intercoolers have proven themselves. I knew they would. I've done tons of testing in other ways of testing, dyno runs and timed acceleration, that sort of thing. Very happy with those two things. The Piggy Back is a huge surprise. I didn't expect it to be that quick, and I can't wait until it's released and I can tell you guys more about it. The tires were good, but honestly I expected better than just 0.05 of a second off the 60-foot, but maybe it's my driving and not the tires. So, 14.157. I think that's the quickest ever for a Fiat 124 on gasoline or through the stock catalytic converter. And I didn't do this under some sort of, unduplicatable perfect conditions. I'm a fairly heavy guy. These are all off-the-shelf mods, except for the Piggy Back, and that hopefully will be off the shelf soon. And I didn't do it under some sort of ideal atmospheric conditions either. So all of these times here should be duplicatable by any Eurocompulsion customer that's running the same mods. Next trip to the drag strip, I will run the car the same way, but either Phase 2 and the Piggy Back or Phase 3 by itself. And I'm also considering, I'm not sure I'm going to do this, but I'm thinking about running Phase 3 with race gas and the Piggy Back. I've got to crunch some numbers to make sure that's safe to do. I'm not so sure, but I'll get to that. Then I want to get my other engine back in there and get that to the drag strip because that engine is really the direction I want to go, and then that'll also get some other products proven so that they can get up for sale, the ported head, stuff like that. So that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way through this, hey, good job, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.